I'm Ari Goldstein, Senior Public Programs Producer at the Museum of Jewish Heritage, a living memorial to the Holocaust. And I'm really delighted to kick off this evening's program, Wallenberg, a musical tribute. Tonight's program will feature a series of songs from Wallenberg, an epic new musical drama which brings the story of Raoul Wallenberg vividly to life on the stage. In July 1944, the 32-year-old Wallenberg, a businessman from Stockholm, left the safety of neutral Sweden on an American-sponsored mission to Nazi-occupied Hungary. Between face-offs with the notorious Adolf Eichmann and secret dealings with the wife of one of Hungary's most prominent fascist leaders, Wallenberg is estimated to have saved more than 100,000 lives, one of the most extensive and successful rescue efforts during the entire Nazi era. Wallenberg the Musical, with book and lyrics by the 2006 Kleban Award-winning team of Lawrence Holzman and Felicia Needleman, and music by Benjamin Rosenbluth, is a very fitting tribute to the remarkable man for whom it's named. We'll hear from Lawrence Holzman in just a moment, and we'll kick off this evening's performance, which features 10 original musical numbers from an amazing cast who are profiled in the printed programs that you have in front of you, which is also linked in the live stream chat. We'll follow the musical performance and close out this evening's program with an on-stage discussion with the team behind Wallenberg the Musical. Without further ado, welcome to the Museum of Jewish Heritage, and please join me in welcoming Lawrence Holzman to the stage.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you all so much for coming. How incredible to be in person in a theater again. So yes. We are so honored to team up with the Museum of Jewish Heritage to share an evening commemorating Raoul Wallenberg, one of the greatest humanitarians in history. Our musical drama, Wallenberg, is a full-length show, but tonight we'll just be presenting a selection of excerpts for you. Just so you know, the actual show has a cast of 26, but tonight we have a smaller group, and so several people will be doubling roles. In 1944, Raoul Wallenberg left the safety of neutral Sweden and went into war-torn Budapest. As a diplomat for the Swedish legation, his original mission was to convince the Nazi-occupied Hungarian government to allow Sweden to issue passports to the city's remaining Jews. The idea was to keep them protected until after the war, which was rapidly coming to an end. And in 6 months' time, he managed to rescue over 100,000 people. So now I give you Wallenberg, some excerpts.
Budapest, 1944, a city at war. Nazi soldiers in Hungarian aerocross rule the streets.
Jews are no longer citizens of Hungary. Jews may no longer be out after curfew.
Jews may no longer own a business.
Jews may no longer be seen in public without wearing a yellow star.
Don't go to work. Don't go to school. Don't think of stepping outside after 8.
Don't go to shul or congregate for praying. It never ends. How long will they be saying? Don't, just don't. Don't think too much. Don't think of trains. Don't think about the stories you hear. Don't let your fear of what may lie ahead now get in the way of somehow finding bread now. their traps, afraid that perhaps the slightest move will set them off. A smile,
A glance,
a blink,
a cough.
Don't think of home, don't start to cry, don't picture how they were taken away.
Get through each day and swallow down the aching.
don't fall apart, though your heart is breaking.
Don't walk too fast, don't walk too slow, don't stay too long in any one place. Don't let us catch you without your papers.
Don't let them see the fear on your face.
And don't fall in love, don't hope for tomorrow, 'cause while you're out one day, they'll steal her away. You'll come home and find that she's gone, and you won't know how to go on.
Where we all die of typhus inside some ghetto, or simply succumb to despair.
Will the end up on some cattle car, headed for God knows where?
Don't walk, don't move, don't eat, don't think, don't talk, don't breathe, don't go. Don't think too much, don't think the train is really about. We are thinking we'll interfere with the children are getting bigger and bigger. We all are getting bigger and bigger. Soon there won't be any left of us. No, there won't. Do we have any hope, any strength left to fight, anybody to turn to make it alright? Do we really believe we'll get through this alive? Do we really believe there's a chance we'll survive? No, we don't.
Arriving in Budapest, Raoul is horrified by the condition of the war-torn city and the plight of the people there. When the Hungarian government denies him the right to issue passports for the Jews, he shifts gears.
In an effort to get to know the city's important political players, he goes to Budapest's most popular nightclub, where Nazi officials and their Hungarian fascist collaborators, the Arrow Cross, dine and dance.
Excuse me. Aren't you the Baron Kameni?
Why, yes.
Raoul Wallenberg, First Secretary of Swedish Legation. I've heard so much about you already, and I've already been in Hungary for just a few weeks now.
I'm flattered. May I introduce my wife, the Baroness Elizabeth?
Pleasure, madam.
Likewise.
Baron, your work with the Arrow Cross is receiving much praise.
So, they're talking about me.
Yes. It is said that if the Arrow Cross takes over, you'll be the new foreign minister.
A beacon of light to guide us through the storm.
Indeed. Indeed. You know, the city has changed quite much since the last time I was here. They've stopped giving royal palace tours, and that lovely lilac garden on Ulloy Street, it's just completely bombed out.
Yes, it's such a shame. It was a beautiful spot. Lilacs are my favorite.
Mine too.
Mr. Wallenberg, the Arrow Cross is quite eager to reach out to the international community, and Sweden's support would mean a lot to us.
I understand.
Baron Kameni. A word, please.
Please excuse me.
Don't worry, you're under no obligation to keep me company.
Would you care to dance?
That would be lovely.
Baroness.
Please, call me Elizabeth.
And you can call me Raoul.
The room is alive with a mystical glow, so let's not give a thought to what people might say. Just hold me tight and dance the night away.
The Arrow Cross has become quite influential in Hungary,
Yes,
and your husband is a very important man.
he is.
The moment I first saw your smile, I felt something I hadn't felt in a while, and I'm lost as the music continues to play. Please hold me tight and dance the night away.
Can I let you in on a little secret?
I'm all ears.
Politics bore me.
My lips are sealed.
Let's whirl around together and sweep across the floor, trapped in the magic of each other's eyes, carelessly allowing our hearts to take the lead, though our heads know otherwise.
Even if you don't care for politics, surely you have an opinion on what's happening here in Budapest, particularly with the Jews.
Jews? You're not Jewish, are you?
No.
Oh, well, it's just horrible what's happening to them.
The situation is desperate, and I've come here to, say, protect them.
This dream of an evening will end, and we'll have to part, my dangerous friend. But for now, for a heartbeat, I beg you to stay. Just hold me tight and dance the night away.
Raoul spots the infamous Adolf Eichmann across the room and sends him a bottle of fancy champagne with a note of introduction.
Colonel Eichmann!
Mr. Wallenberg, it is an honor. It's not every day I get a bottle of Dom Perignon from a member of such a prominent family.
And it's not every day that I get to send one to such a notorious member of the Nazi Party.
So, Mr. Wallenberg, you are here to try and save the Jews.
I see you've done your homework.
I have my resources.
Well, how about it? What will it take? 2 million? 3?
Oh, it's fun, dealing with someone from such a big banking family.
I am quite serious, Colonel. I could have the cash to you by tomorrow morning. All it would take is for you and your men to leave the Jews here in Budapest alone.
You should do your research. I was offered twice that amount for the Jews of Slovakia just a few months ago, and I turned it down.
Times have changed. Germany doesn't quite hold the same position it did a few months ago. I am offering an easy solution to your Jewish problem.
Wallenberg says only one solution for the Jewish problem. The final one. But thank you again for the champagne. It was quite good.
I'm not about to give up, you know.
You do what you must. But I'd be careful. Budapest is a dangerous city these days. Hi!
Undeterred by Eichmann's threats, Raoul finds innovative ways to help people. To get around the Nazi law that prohibits Jews from working, he takes in some Jews as volunteers at the legation, which brings them under Swedish protection. He also comes up with a clever way to keep even more people safer on the streets.
Here, bring me that box of yellow paper over there.
What's going on?
Well, Herr Admiral Horthy won't issue any more Swedish passports, but there is no law about the number of Schutz passes that we can give out.
Schutz pass.
What's a Schutzpass?
It's a Swedish protective pass.
But there's no such thing. We don't have the right to create.
We'll take a piece of paper, yellow piece of paper, emboss it with the seal of the legation, and fold. And now to look official, it's got to look official, to place the royal crown on Sweden's king, right in the middle in gold. With seals and stamps and legal mumbo-jumbo interspersed, we first will have our first official Schutzpass.
This goes against all regulations.
Next we'll take a photo. Here I have a photo. Stick it
In the upper right-hand corner.
All right. Now for the statistics. It's got to have statistics. The name, the date of the birth.
The hair and eyes.
That's good. And add the weight and height.
And have the person sign it there.
All right, that's what we'll do. We're one step closer to the finished Schutzpass. Now here's the crucial part. Just wait. Below this section, the document will state the Royal Swedish Legation in Budapest
Royal Swedish Legation in Budapest
confirms that the above-mentioned person
confirms that the above-mentioned person
will travel to Sweden under the collective password.
But it has no validity. We can't just claim these people as our own. They're citizens of Hungary.
I like the shiny gold seal, Mama. So do I, Oscar.
It does make it look remarkably legitimate there.
Besides, most of the Nazis patrolling the streets are teenagers.
and we all know how they're taught to respect authority.
Yes, that reminds me. There's one more little detail. We need to get the Swedish foreign minister to sign.
But wait, he's back in Stockholm.
Well, we can't go to Stockholm. Let's see whose writing looks most like the minister's. Oh, mine!
When they find out about this back in Sweden,
In light of what it's for, I'm sure the minister won't care.
All right, my friends, we now have a Schutzpass.
Schutzpass, now we have a Schutzpass.
tell me you really think this is going to work.
I really think this is going to work. All right, everyone, let's get started.
Take a piece of silk and take a yellow piece of paper, really does this any longer. Hold or shelter, thanks to this untold official, so they will gladly hold. This little piece is the earth, the center piece is the earth, the center piece is the paper is gold. I feel safer than before. Ever Schutzpass me. Let's make more of a Schutzpass. Make it through this war with a Schutzpass.
July 26, 1944. Dear Mama and Papa, what a treat to get those chocolates you sent. They went like that. Just a little taste of home, how much it went to this new diplomat. I'm sorry I haven't been in touch since the telegram I sent when I first arrived.
I'm settled into my apartment. It overlooks the Danube River and has a lovely view of the city, but I'm hardly ever there to enjoy it.
These have probably been the most nerve-wracking weeks of my life.
A few days ago, I bought 5 homes from the Nazis. They had been taken from Jewish families and they were just sitting there empty.
I have now set them up as Swedish safe houses where we have nearly 100 Jews under our protection. I also have close to that number of people volunteering at the legation.
And a few days ago, we started giving out Schutz passes.
What's a Schutzpass?
I don't know. They have no real standing in international law, but they seem to be helping people out on the street.
Sometimes I worry that these tactics may actually be putting the Jews in greater danger. But I can't sit back and do nothing.
Not to worry, though. While I've been extremely busy, it hasn't been all work here. In fact, I met a very interesting woman. We have a lot in common, but unfortunately, she's married.
There's so much more that I wish I could say.
Please know you both are in my heart here each day.
For now, though I send hugs and kisses your way, lovingly yours,
With rising pressure from the worldwide diplomatic community, Germany is forced to cease deportations for a while, and there's a relative period of calm. And miraculously, the people who are lucky enough to get Schutz passes remain protected from the Nazi soldiers out on the city streets.
But when it becomes clear that Germany is losing the war, Eichmann redoubles his efforts to eliminate the Jews, and deportations begin again at an alarming rate.
Suddenly, the thousands of Jews who don't have Schutzpasses are rounded up from their homes to be sent to Auschwitz.
Ralph! They're dragging people, children, from their homes. They have no shoes on. What? They're taking them all to the train station.
Here, call Minister Danielson in Stockholm. Get word to Washington and the Vatican. We've got to put pressure on Himmler.
Right. Vilmos, get the box of Schutzpasses and the money and load up the car with medical supplies. The blankets, bandages. We don't know what condition these people will be in.
Of course, Mr. Wallenberg.
What do you do?
I'm going to the train station.
Ralph, you can't put yourself right in the middle of it.
I've got to stop it.
They'll kill you.
I am a representative of the Swedish royal government.
Swedes aren't bulletproof.
I don't know what else to do. I have no choice.
Look at that sturdy oak there, powerful, solid, sturdy. Through wind and rain it stands, that invincible tree. You give it the strength it needs to weather any storm. Grant me the same, oh God, grant it to me. And there's the mighty ocean, constant and unrelenting. The tides roll in and out perpetually. You give it the wherewithal to always persevere. Grant me the same, oh God, grant it to me. Let me march on ahead with assurance, with an air of command in each step. Let them see me as someone who gets what he wants time and again. Let me speak out without hesitation. Let my words be well chosen and strong. Let the voice of this one single man carry the voice of thousands of men. Think of the fearless lion, master of all the jungle. The thunder of his roar makes everyone flee. You give him the confidence to know that he can win. Grant me the same, oh God. Grant it to me. Grant me the wisdom and courage I need. With you by my side, I know I'll succeed. Grant me your help, dear God. Grant it to me. Grant it to me. Grant it to me.
Raoul, Hare, and Vilmos raced to the train station, where they managed to sneak Schutzpasses to many of the Jews through the bars in the cattle car windows. In an insane act of defiance, Raoul climbs on top of one of the cars to address the armed Nazi soldiers.
This train is not going anywhere until you let all of my Swedish citizens off.
Are you crazy? They're not Swedish citizens, they're Jews! I have no authorization to release any Jews. Now get down from there!
I am representative of the Swedish legation. There are people on this train with Schutzpasses, and I demand you let them go.
I'm warning you.
You have no authority to take these people. Open this train door, soldier.
Nobody is allowed off these cars. I've been directed to shoot anyone who interferes with this transport.
You have no idea who you are dealing with. My name is Wallenberg. How dare you speak to me that way? My name is Wallenberg, so you better watch what you say. If I were you, young man, I'd listen very carefully. You really want to challenge me?
I have orders to follow.
And where does it say that you have the right to deport citizens of a neutral country on this train? What's your name, soldier?
Hans Schuler, and I am a captain.
Well, Captain Schuler. My name is Wallenberg. After today, you know it well. With all of the friends I've got, I'll make your life a living hell. Just one call from me, and your promising career is through. That will be the end of you. Do you want to be on the list of those to be tried as war criminals? Or shall I advise General Schmidhuber to give you a promotion?
I will give you 2 minutes.
Anyone with a Schutzpass, come forward! Hurry once!
A woman makes her way to the door, waving her Schutzpass. The soldier watches closely. There is pushing and shoving from within the cars as people make their way to the door, waving their Schutzpasses.
Raoul helps them down and directs them off stage to safety.
Mr. Wallenberg.
Take my hand.
Mr. Wallenberg.
Quickly now.
Mr. Wallenberg.
Right this way.
Mr. Wallenberg.
One after the next, he's getting them out. They're standing aside, they're letting them through. If I didn't see it, I'd never believe it's true. Stop! This man man has no papers.
But I issued you a Schutzpass last week.
Sir, I've never...
Wait, what is that? It was taken from you? No, that's okay. We've got your name right here. In this book.
It's only my appointment book.
That's right. It's the names of all the people in this book. Here, we've got your name right here. Joseph Beckendorf.
No, sir, my name is...
Mr. Beckendorf, yes. Good to see you again. Herr Hucken. And, Magda Gold.
Yes, that's me, Magda Gold.
Excellent. We gave you a ship's pass last September. Vilmos, help her.
Come with me.
Let's see. Who else do we have here? Dora Varga! Laszlo Vasyoni!
Mr. Wallenberg!
Mr. Wallenberg!
Judith, give me your hand.
Wallenberg!
Colonel Eichmann.
Now, Mr. Wallenberg, this isn't very smart of you. You've started something now, and what is a man like me to do? This brazen stunt you're pulling here must come to an end. You've made a daring move, and now I've got to defend. You leave me here without a choice, my friend.
These people are under the protection of the Swedish government. These are my Swedes, and I have every
These
right
are my Jews.
Oscar! Where's my Oscar? I'm here!
Oscar's mother rushes back onto the train to get her son. While she is inside the train car, a man passes Oscar off the train into Raoul's arms. Eichmann immediately pulls the train door closed, trapping Oscar's mother and a carload of screaming people inside.
Mama!
Eichmann points his pistol at Raoul's head. Raoul gingerly puts Oscar down, pushing him into the safety of Pear's arms and out of Eichmann's line of fire.
Shoot. I'm sure Hitler will make you a general if you kill a member of the neutral legation.
Eichmann slowly lowers his pistol.
This train is leaving.
Recognizing the importance of the Jews' hope as well as their lives, Raoul takes a personal interest in the people he tries to save. On one occasion, he even manages to sneak a rabbi into the legation office to perform a bris for a week-old baby.
Oh, it's so exciting.
Mr. Wallenberg, I can't believe you could make this happen.
And we can't thank you enough, Rabbi. With so many people being taken to the ghetto now, we know how hard it was for you to come here and do this.
My dear, he's 8 days old. He should have a bris. Let's celebrate this moment that we thought we'd never see. Forget about the sorrow and the pain and misery.
Today we'll see a miracle somehow.
Take heart, my friends, for now there's another one of us to our profound amazement. To see to it that our traditions thrive.
Another one to bravely take us toward the future, but manage still to keep the past alive.
Another one of us to give the day's new purpose, a life at last when all we've seen is death.
Another one of us created in God's image.
A brand new baby taking in life's breath.
They think they can destroy us, erase us from the earth, that all we've got are hopeless empty prayers.
But lo and behold, now there's another one of us, another one of us.
To go to school each morning, to study hard and let's make it.
To one day have his mama turn around and notice her boy has suddenly become a man.
Another one of us to stand beneath the hook, to break the glass, to shout a mazel tov.
Another one of us to dance a wedding chorus.
And fill another Jewish home with life and love.
Another one of us,
another one of us.
of our covenant with God.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvasav v'tzivanu al hamilah.
One of us to wake each morning, each to embrace the day, ready to take on whatever challenges may come his way.
Another one to smell the springtime, feel the sunlight beating strong,
Drinking all of nature's blessings, offer thanks to God in song. Another one we can depend on when he's grown to have more Jewish children of his own. Another one of us, another one of us, another one of us, another one of us.
One evening, in a rare moment of candor, Vilmos opens up to Raoul about his wife, who had been taken away by the Nazis.
All I did was go out and see if I could find us some bread, and when I came home, she was gone.
I'm sorry, Vilmos.
And so am I. I'm sorry I was such a selfish bastard. 2 years ago, my Anna got a visa to travel to America to stay with her cousins. But I said, no, I love you, I need you, don't go without me.
No, it's not your fault.
It is! I should have insisted that she get out.
I had the registries of all the camps checked. Theresienstadt, Bergen-Belsen, Auschwitz. She's not on any of these lists. She could be in hiding. Or maybe she made it out.
She wore this hat, this silly hat, and it had feathers sticking out from the side, yellow feathers sticking out from the side, and it just didn't fit her well. It was 2 sizes too big, as far as I could tell. But she looked beautiful somehow. Where is she now? My Anna. Where is she now? My Anna. She couldn't cook, not even eggs. It was pathetic what she'd do to a steak. And my God, when she attempted to bake. But again and again she would try, and we would taste it and laugh about it, she and I. Oh, how I'd love just one more bite, just one more night with Anna. Just one more night with Anna. She had these eyes, piercing blue. I never knew a pair of eyes could hold such power. And hour after hour, I'd stare into those eyes, get lost within their sparkle, and find to my surprise loved her more than I had before. She'd tell a joke, a simple joke, a joke that anyone could manage with ease. She'd start out fine, but then she would freeze. Or she'd go on for much too long, and the punchline would come, and it would be all wrong. Still, she made me laugh more than anyone. Yes, life was fun with Anna. With her, I was the happiest of men. Will she ever make me laugh again? My Anna, oh Anna.
Over the course of his 6 months in Budapest, Raoul remains in close contact with the Baroness Elizabeth Kameni. In time, he opens her eyes to the truth of her husband's active participation in what the Nazis are doing to the Jews. Disgusted, she begins to help Raoul in his mission. Working closely together, the two come to have feelings for each other, and Elizabeth eventually leaves her husband.
As the war draws to a close in Hungary, and the Russians liberate the city from the Nazis, Raoul and Elizabeth make plans to leave Budapest together. They meet at the train station.
Oh, Raoul, over here.
Elizabeth,
Roses, they're beautiful.
they weren't my first choice, but lilacs are out of season.
You never cease to amaze me.
It is you who amazes me.
I still can't believe we're doing this. Where are your bags? You're not coming with me?
Not yet.
But you said that we would go to Switzerland together.
I know, and I'm sorry for deceiving you, but all of those people who made it through, just somehow they have disease and hunger, and they may be free now, but they still need my help.
Then I'll stay and work with you, and we'll go together when the time is right. I left the Baron because it's you I want to be with. Please don't abandon me now.
Elizabeth, now that the Russians are here, don't you see? It's dangerous for you. With your ties with the Arrow Cross. In Geneva, you'll be out of harm's way.
No, I am
not...
not...
No, please! I can't bear to think of anything happening to you. I will return to Switzerland. You go, and I will take you home to Stockholm.
Stockholm. But we can't know what will happen, can we, with the world the way that it is?
The countless shades of purple, the fragrance in the air, the blossoms that dot the local hillsides everywhere. One day they will return, you'll see. We'll breathe in that perfume. Yes, the lilacs will bloom again. Someday the weary soldiers will come home to their wives. The houses will be filled with people leading a normal lives. The laughter of the children rise again, resound through every room, and the lilacs will bloom again. Sometime soon the world will be just like before.
We'll go for coffee down the street,
Get groceries at the store,
pick apples in October,
go swimming in July,
and lovers will go dancing underneath the moonlit sky.
Soon there will be music, just like there used to be. Bright and joyous music filled with sweeping melody. Forgotten feelings in our hearts, I know they will resume. And the lilacs will bloom.
yes, one fine day, a bird will
Yes, the violets will bloom
When the war is finally over, Vilmos drives Raoul to go meet with the Russians to formulate a plan of relief for the Budapest's remaining Jews.
His co-workers at the legation tried to dissuade him, citing the danger of placing trust in the Russians, but Raoul assures them he will be back in a few days.
January 17, 1946. Dear Marshal Stalin.
6 months ago, our son, Raoul Wallenberg, was taken into custody by the Soviets, and we have yet to receive a report on his whereabouts. All the other legation employees returned home weeks ago.
The allegations that our son was spying for the U.S. have no basis in fact. While the money for his mission came from America, his activities in Budapest were focused entirely on his rescue operation.
Surely there is someone who can tell us about our son.
April 23, 1957. Dear Chairman Khrushchev, my name is Anna Langfelder. I survived Auschwitz. I know my husband, Vilmos, was executed by the Russians, and you claim that Wallenberg died of a heart attack 10 years ago. But just last week, you released a prisoner who says he had recent contact with Mr. Wallenberg.
October 14th, 1964. Dear President Brezhnev, we've been told you tried to negotiate a trade of Raoul Wallenberg for a Soviet spy. How then can you continue to claim that Wallenberg is no longer alive? Are you in the habit of negotiating with dead bodies?
September 24th, 1983. Dear Chairman Andropov, President Ronald Reagan signed a bill making Raoul Wallenberg an honorary U.S. citizen. If he is still alive, as I recently heard on the news, I hope you will now see how crucial it is that he be released.
March 4th, 1991. Dear Secretary Gorbachev, isn't it true that Brezhnev had been a commander in the Red Army when the Soviets invaded Budapest?
And that he knew about the jewels that Wallenberg had hidden for the Jews.
And that he broke into the wall safe at the legation.
And used the fortune he found there over the next 20 years to bribe his way to the top of the Soviet hierarchy?
And wasn't it in Brezhnev's interest to keep Wallenberg in prison so he couldn't reveal that dirty little secret to the world?
December 4th, 1995.
Is Wallenberg alive in a Siberian work camp?
Are they holding him in a Russian psychiatric hospital?
The prisoner says he was in the cell next to him in 1972.
August 12th, 1992.
May 14th, 2005.
September 7th.
November 30th, 2016.
January 17th, 2021. Dear President Putin, today marks the 75th anniversary of the mysterious abduction of Raoul Wallenberg. Mr. Wallenberg saved the lives of over 100,000 people, more than were rescued by any individual, organization, or government during the entire Holocaust. The world needs to know the fate of this man who gave us so much. I was a young boy in 1944 when Mr. Wallenberg pulled me off a cattle car bound for Auschwitz. My name is Oscar Karani.
There's a mother in Detroit with tears in her eyes, 'cause her daughter took her first steps today.
In London there's a boy whose bar mitzvah's next month, and his grandfather's teaching him to pray.
There's a hush among the guests in a synagogue in Rome.
Thank you all for being here. We're going to turn in just a moment to a discussion on stage with the creative team behind Wallenberg the Musical. We'll be joined by Lawrence Holzman, who co-wrote the book and lyrics, by Benjamin Rosenbluth, who wrote the music, by Darren Cohen, who has been involved in direction and musical direction, and by Lauren Leibowitz-Feldman, one of the actresses and singers who you saw on stage this evening. The discussion will last around 20 minutes, so we hope you'll stick around and join us. We're just going to switch the stage. Thank you. We're glad to take questions from those of you in the room and those of you watching online. If you're an online audience member, you can share your questions in the live stream chat. But before we get to that, let's begin with questions for you, Darren and Lawrence, and Benjamin, about the metamorphosis and origin of the play. What led you guys to create Wallenberg the Musical?
Well, I guess it was my fault. I was teaching in a Hebrew school, after-school program, 6th grade, and the curriculum was Holocaust. And we had a book, a book of photographs about the Holocaust. And there was a chapter on righteous Gentiles. And the first page of that chapter said, in 1944, Raoul Wallenberg left the safety of neutral Sweden and went into war-torn Budapest, and in 6 months' time saved over 100,000 lives, more than were rescued by any other individual, organization, or government during the entire war. And then the next page went on to say how Anne Frank and her family were hidden in an attic. And I thought to myself, wait a minute, if that first page is true, how is it that I, who had a very strong Jewish education, never heard of this guy? I mean, maybe I had heard of him, I knew he was on a stamp, but I really knew nothing about him. And that led me to do a little research, and I called my writing partner, Felicia Needleman, who could not be here today. She and I write book and lyrics together. And I said, do you know who Raoul Wallenberg is? And she said, no, I never heard of him. Who is he? So I said, Google him. And we started to do research, and we said, we have to tell this story, because it's incredible. I mean, what this guy did, he went there with a task to do. He really was a businessman. I mean, he wasn't James Bond, and he got there, saw that it couldn't be done, and he became James Bond. And he's just incredible. The more you read about him, and I know you're all going to go home and Google him, the more it's impressive. So we said we have to tell the story. So we called Benji and told him to take out his piano. And
Benji, I want to follow up with you in a second, but Lawrence, when you were writing this, how did you balance historical accuracy with drama and creating something that would be lively on the stage?
It ain't easy, Art. Well, there were a lot of parts of the story that we wanted to go into and couldn't. What happened to Raoul at the end of his time in Budapest, when he was abducted by the Russians and then basically never seen again in the outside world, is fascinating, horrible, after he saved so many people and then they couldn't save him. But we decided that really what was so incredible was what he did in those 6 months in Budapest. So we decided to really focus our story on that part of his life and what he actually did. There are so many people who, do good things, but it's beyond, because he had no personal connection to these people. He picked up from a very safe life. He was from what's still one of the wealthiest families in Stockholm, and he picked up and he went literally into the middle of the war. The war was winding down, and Hungary was right in the heart of where all the action was. And when he couldn't do his job, he said, I got to do something. I can't just allow this to happen. And it stuck with us so that we said, that's really what impressed us, and that's what we have to tell. So we really focused in on that time and the events. I mean, all the history books tell us the events. We knew what we had to include.
So Benji, you created music to bring the book that Lawrence and Felicia wrote and turn it into a musical. How did you go about that process, and was there other music that you turned to for inspiration?
So, yes, I mean, there is some music that is of the time, but as you can hear, most of it is very contemporary. It's very in the moment. It's very something that we can relate to, because I thought of this as a fundamentally human story and a story that transcends time. So in terms of turning to Hungarian inspiration or Swedish inspiration, I mean, that was in the background, and it certainly shows itself in some of the scenes. But that was sort of how we approached it. I mean, I'll say it was funny. When you asked about how to dramatize history, and I think one of the problems that we sort of came up against was that he was so utterly heroic that people didn't believe that this really happened. They thought we were whitewashing it, and at one point we even looked to find faults, obvious deficiencies, just to make it more lifelike and more realistic. And it's incredibly hard to find. He's such a superhuman type of person. I mean, nevertheless, the story needs to be told. But from a musical perspective, I think we tried to look. Obviously, there are certain Jewish elements in some of the songs, but by and large, it's just the contemporary kind of a sound that we went for.
I'm sure it's not an easy task to take history that's this dark and complicated and then make it into something that's actually really enjoyable to listen to. You guys have struck a terrific balance. Lauren, in addition to acting and singing in the musical, you are the granddaughter of Holocaust survivors yourself. Could you tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure. My grandparents are survivors from Poland. My grandmother was from Lodz, and my grandfather is from Siedlce, Poland. I was the grandchild that got the bug for wanting to know everything about their stories. And so I used to sit with my grandmother for hours at her kitchen table, and she used to tell me all the stories, and she entrusted in me with all her photographs that she had carried with her throughout the war. So being a third generation survivor, telling the stories of the Holocaust has been a real passion of mine. And so when I went to this audition for Wallenberg, I talked Lawrence's ear off, and I was like, you will never find anybody more passionate about this. You have to put me in your show.
And if I could lend some credence to Lauren saying that she's passionate, she was a board member of the Young Friends organization here at our museum. She's been a lay leader in our museum community and very supportive of our educational efforts. So it's a nice connection between our work at the museum and the musical itself.
And she sings really well.
Lauren, can you tell us a little bit about the character Rosa that you were playing tonight? We got a sense of you, but I know we didn't see the whole show.
Sure, yeah. Unfortunately, you only got snippets of the show tonight. So Rosa is a Jewish lady whose husband, I don't know where her husband is. Maybe he's been taken to a camp, or he's been killed, or he passed away before. And she's pregnant. And she goes to the legation one day, and Raoul Wallenberg picks her out, and he says, you know what? Raoul Wallenberg, basically when he came into Budapest, he created all of these volunteer opportunities for the Jews. Jews couldn't work, but they could volunteer. And so Rosa became his secretary. And that's really, that's her journey through the show. She's working in the legation, and she has a baby, and Raoul, provides this special ceremony for her baby.
So I should say that Rosa is actually a conglomeration of various characters various people that we read about. And we combined a few stories into her character. He did take in volunteers. His secretary is written about in a lot of the books. But there was actually a baby who was given a bris. He sneaked a rabbi out of the ghetto to, I guess, a mohel, to do this bris, and it was really an incredible thing. So we kind of fudged it to, make it more cohesive. But
that is amazing.
Yeah.
Darren.
Yes.
Saving you for last, but so this musical has been many years in the making, and during COVID, and what was otherwise a time that was free of plays and musicals, you actually brought the cast back together and did this virtual rendition of A Million Tomorrows. Can you tell us about what that was like?
It was hard. I know so many theater people have been doing these online virtual concerts, but I didn't realize what really went into it until I had to do it. We set up a click track. I sent everybody their melody part of the big numbers. I wrote all in the cutoffs, diction, entrances. Everything was put in the PDF. They had to sing it at home with their iPhone. In their ear, they listened to the click track, sang to it, and then when we got them all back together, every cutoff was right there, every entrance was right there, and I'm like, wow, let's do more of this. Like, I don't have to leave my bedroom. This is great.
It did turn out really well.
Yeah, it was fun.
It was amazing.
I have to just say, a lot of the cast is in the audience. Out of the 20 people, only 4 have been a part of this. Everybody else I met on Monday.
Amazing.
So
I'm curious, you guys, especially those of you on stage, must have gotten to know Raoul Wallenberg, the character, pretty well through theater. I'm curious what insights you've drawn about Wallenberg the man. What do you think motivated him to do what he did at such great personal cost?
He was a really interesting guy. He came from this really wealthy family, and his father died when he was young, and so his grandfather took care of him, and his grandfather wanted him to have a different kind of education. They were very wealthy, and he wanted to send him to college in America, but he didn't want him to go to a Harvard or Yale or Princeton, and so he sent him to the University of Michigan. And go blue. Me too. And he was just like a normal guy at school. He hitchhiked. He was like hanging out with his buddies on campus. He was just a normal guy. And I think he went into the banking business when he came back to Sweden, and he didn't like it, and he was looking for something more meaningful. He was 32 years old, which is pretty fantastic that he did what he did.
So he was actually working for an import-export company, selling or arranging for the sale of lox and smoked fishes and food delicacies that would get shipped out to Europe. He was working for a Jewish man who, because Jews couldn't travel around Europe at the time, he often sent Raoul around Europe, and he spoke German and Hungarian and English and one other language, I think, and
Swedish.
Oh, Swedish, yes. Swedish. He did speak Swedish. And so he was very useful as someone who could go and communicate around Europe, and he was free to travel. So, and as a result, he met many Jews, and he was very familiar with Budapest when he was eventually sent back to do this mission.
Let me ask you.
Yeah. No, just I don't feel like we answered your question though. Yeah. You asked what would have made him do such a thing.
I'm curious about your emotional insights into him from the character.
He had a tough family to live up to. I mean, the Wallenbergs are still like the Rockefellers of Sweden, and so I feel like he felt like he was a failed banker. They still own the largest bank in Sweden, and he really wasn't interested in doing that. And so, at least in our show, he tries to live up to them, and that's one of his motivations to go and take this on this dangerous thing is to make a name for himself, find his way as a Wallenberg.
I also don't think we know ourselves until we're put in a situation. When I walk down the streets, I always say, if I was assaulted or somebody there was assaulted, would I speak up or would I just run and hide? And if I did help and I saved that person, was that person going to have a baby next year? Who then would have a baby? And brother, it's that same, it's a wonderful life. What does one life do by saving somebody? And I don't think he knew this, as if I don't know what I would do if I was ever, God forbid, attacked. But I guess when he was faced with it, he faced it, as opposed to going, I didn't come here for this. And that's why it's a musical about a man's journey, not the Holocaust musical. And that's why I think these guys did such a great work. It's really about somebody's journey.
I think something that also that Lawrence touched on in the book is, I think he was raised well. I mean, we don't know that much about his relationship with his parents, but it's something that we really do tap into because it's a beautiful relationship that he has with his mother, certainly, and I think that combined with that ambition is what perhaps drove him to try so hard to do the right thing.
I'm honestly fascinated listening to you guys say this because we tell a lot of stories about rescuers here at the museum. Among the many stories there are to tell about the Holocaust, they're some of the most obviously inspiring. And there are not immediately common threads between everyone who rescued people during the Holocaust. It's not like they were all preachers or they were all from banking families. So everybody has their own collection of reasons that are very human. And some of them we know and have insight into, and some of them we don't, looking back this many years later. Let me ask you guys one more question, and then we'll turn to the audience. Wallenberg is estimated to have saved 100,000 people, so that must mean now there's hundreds of thousands or more people in the world who have this direct connection to being saved by Wallenberg. I imagine in the course of writing and performing this musical, you've come across Wallenberg survivors and descendants. Can you tell us a little bit about some of those interactions and the reactions you've gotten?
Okay, so the first time we did a reading of the show, we did it at Symphony Space uptown, and we were just starting out. It was part of us. We got selected to be part of a series of first draft musicals, and we called to check on how many people were coming, and suddenly we had a reservation for 55 people from something called the International Raoul Wallenberg Foundation. We didn't even know that existed or what it was, and it turns out that it is a foundation that got started to find out what happened to Wallenberg, but has since become an educational organization that teaches not only about Wallenberg, but about other righteous Gentiles and other humanitarians throughout history. But there they were, and we said, oh, great, we have an audience. And after we did a talk back, much like this, and a woman stood up and said, that secretary that you did, that was me. Mm. And so a man stood up and he said, I'm here because of what that man did. And this person, and he pulled up a young man who was his son, and this person, and he picked up a little boy, they're here because of what he did. This is my son and my grandson, and everybody was floored. You could hear a pin drop. And it was almost like we planted them. And we should have, I just didn't know. But we have come across, and someone who was involved with the show at one point, right after we did a reading, got into a cab to go home, and the cab driver had a Hungarian accent. And she was being friendly, and she said, oh, where are you from? And he said, Hungary. And she said, oh, that's so interesting. I work in musicals, and I just did a show about. And he said, I was saved by Wallenberg. I was in one of his safe houses. And Lauren?
My grandfather had a friend who lived in the same complex in Florida. There was actually a bunch of Holocaust survivors, and they used to sit around all the time. And he was saved by Wallenberg. He was a young boy, and he always told me that Wallenberg, in his mind, was this really tall guy, and he remembers him patting his head. But one day, this was amazing. We were all sitting by the pool, and this Wallenberg survivor was sitting there, and his family started coming in. They were coming to visit him at the pool, and it was like his daughter and his son, and then the granddaughter, and then two grandsons came, and it was like this whole like group of Wallenberg offspring, and we were just blown away by that. It was a million tomorrows.
The conversations continued, and the stories poured out, and we even wrote scenes to reflect stories that we then heard from people. Fascinating. Some of the most nail-biting scenes were actually dramatizations of what we actually heard about from the mouths of those who underwent those stories.
Thank you for sharing. And I also just want to mention that we may have multiple people joining us tonight who have a personal connection. I know that Ivan Vamos, who's in our virtual audience, lived in one of the safe houses like those set up by Wallenberg and was saved. So, Ivan, we're glad you're here. Let's turn to audience questions. My colleague Daniel has a microphone, so raise your hand if you're in the room, and Daniel can approach you. If you're with us online, feel free to type your question into the live stream chat. Yes, you know what, let's take one online, and then we'll go to you right here. Anna Marie is asking, did the Russians admit what they did to Wallenberg, and why did they imprison him?
So that's a very good question. Why did they imprison him? We don't know. They still claim, they stand by their claim that he died in 1947, so 2 years later in Lubyanka prison in Moscow. Of a heart attack.
He was 34 years old.
At 34 years old. So he was perfectly healthy. Now, we don't know that he didn't, but stories came out much later, well into the late 70s and even I think the early 80s, that people came out of the gulag and said, what do you mean he died? I shared a prison cell with him 10 years ago. Or I was in a psychiatric hospital with him in Siberia during this period. And so there is good reason to believe that he did not die of a heart attack in 1947. But they stand by that story. And
my understanding also is that he was imprisoned on suspicion of espionage by Soviet authorities. Let's turn to this question here.
Hi. First of all, I just wanted to tell you that was really very moving. Loved watching it. I really appreciate that you have put this together. My question is, I wondered if any Wallenberg family members in Sweden have pursued searching for him, or if there's communication between them and anyone to see whatever became of him.
So the answer is yes. His parents, his mom, and actually it was his stepfather. His father died before he was born. But he was raised by his stepfather and his mom. They spent the rest of their lives pleading with the Soviet government. The Wallenberg family, there were kind of two sides. There was Raoul Wallenberg's side, and then his cousins, who were the bigwigs at the bank. He did not follow that route, and the family kind of, there was kind of a divide. An interesting thing is that while Wallenberg was in Budapest helping the Jews, the Wallenberg Bank was handling Hitler's money, so to speak. So I don't know how pleased those Wallenbergs were with what was going on. I don't know, but I do know that his parents and subsequently his stepsister and brother spent a long time pleading with the government. They were responsible for the communication with, eventually with Ronald Reagan when he made him an honorary U.S. citizen. And the reason behind that is because that if he became an honorary U.S. citizen, that would enable the United States to act more on his behalf in trying to find out if he was still alive or to get a result, but to no avail.
Thank you, Lawrence. We'll turn to our next question in the room.
Hi. That really was wonderful. I have another question about the motivation. The song grant me the same. It seemed like he was talking to God. Do you have any indication that he was a religious person?
We do. I think that his parents were very religious. They went to church. He learned a lot from his parents about being charitable, from what we can ascertain. There's a book of his letters, which contains a lot of the letters he wrote to his parents, not only from Budapest, but throughout his life. And so there is some indication that they were a religious family. Yeah.
I'm wondering when you're going to Broadway and if we, the non-bankers, can do anything to help you get there.
Yes. When I don't know how to answer the when. That depends on you, the non-bankers. How many of you there are? Well, okay. So the International Raoul Wallenberg Foundation, after we met with these people, and they said, "What can we do to help this happen?" And I said, "You can write me a check for $14 million." And he said, "I'd love to, but unfortunately, we don't. We're not we don't have a lot of money." But eventually, we had a lot of talks with them, and they do serve as an umbrella, a not-for-profit umbrella. So we are able to take fully tax-deductible donations made out to the foundation, earmarked for the musical, that come 100% to us. And we also will have standard investments. What we need is a really big producer and a lot of those investments.
So we would definitely encourage you, on behalf of the museum, since we're so supportive of this musical, do share it on social media, and you can donate, like Lawrence mentioned, at the link that's in the live stream chat. If you're here in person, you'll also get a follow-up email from us that includes that link and some others. I can say that we are about to open the first ever play that we are staging on our own at the museum. We're opening Becoming Dr. Ruth, starring Tova Feldshuh. Previews start December 4th in this theater. And theater is complicated, and there's a whole business behind it, so I can understand what you guys are going through.
And that's one woman.
You're right. Are there any other questions, either from those with us online or in the room? Yes.
Do I have to wait for him?
Yes, please, because the microphone will catch your sound for the folks joining us online.
It's mentioned in the show, and you guys have mentioned it many times tonight, that he's credited with saving 100,000 people or more. We show a little bit of that tonight. Could you speak quickly, because I think 70,000 were in one particular city.
In the ghetto.
Right, so if you could mention that, and also one of the stories that always moves me to no end is the story that we tell in parts of the show, where he got swimmers.
Okay.
If you could tell that would be,
sure.
I think that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, so at the very end of the war, right before the Russians invaded Budapest, the Nazis had moved basically all of the Jews who were remaining, which was 70,000 Jews, into the Budapest Ghetto. And it was a walled-off section of the city, and they couldn't get out, and you couldn't get in, and there was a lot of disease. There was typhus and hunger, and people were dying in the streets. It was terrible. And at the very end of the war, just as the Russians were approaching, Raoul and the people that he worked with managed to convince Eichmann had already left town because he knew that the Russians were right at the doorstep. And Raoul managed to convince the general who was in charge of bombing the ghetto, which was their last resort, not to do it, because he said, I am going to make sure that you're brought up on trial for war crimes. And the guy didn't want to take a chance, and he actually saved those 70,000 people. And at the end, when they were suddenly free and the Russians had entered, that's one of the reasons that Raoul did not leave. He knew that these people needed his help. I mean, they were really sick and they needed to rebuild the community, and he just took that upon himself. That was, everybody else from the Swedish legation had gone home weeks before, and he just stayed there because he felt he had to.
And that's a big musical number at the end of
Yes.
the show called 70,000 People.
And the other story Jim was referring to about the swimmers, that brings me back to what Benji said earlier. This actually was not in the show originally, but we heard about it from one of the survivors who was in the audience, and we said, okay, now we have to write a number because that has to be in the show. A woman stood up and said that she had been one of the swimmers who swam for him, and we didn't know what that meant. And she explained that the Arrow Cross would take the Jews, would gather them up at night, round them up, tie the Jews 3 together with rope, and shoot them into the Danube River. And the reason they tied them together was to save bullets. So they would shoot one, and because they were tied together, all 3 would fall in and drown in the Danube. And when Raoul got wind of this, this would happen nightly. He decided to find swimmers. Hungary was and is still their Olympic swim team is incredible. And he asked around and he found swimmers who were willing to come and swim from the opposite side of the river to cut the ropes and free the people who had not been shot and swim them to safety. And this woman was one of the people who had swum for him. And incredible. And so we added that to the show.
It is amazing.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's incredible.
Let's close with this question from Janice online about whether this evening's performance will be available afterwards. The Wallenberg musical team has graciously allowed us to keep it up online, so yes, we will keep this evening's performance and discussion available on the museum's YouTube channel and website, and as part of all of you taking this message out there, we do hope that you'll share the recording with friends and family and others who may not have been able to join us tonight. One of the quotes about the Holocaust that our CEO at the museum often repeats is from Elie Wiesel, who says, "When you listen to a witness, you become a witness." So by being in the audience this evening, you guys are witnesses to the story of Raoul Wallenberg and the Holocaust, and we hope you take that with you in your hearts after this evening. Great thanks to Lauren, Darren, Benjamin, and Lawrence for this panel, and to the entire cast for this evening's performance. Have a great evening, everyone.